Hello and welcome to Sweet Spot DFS. This is a preview for the 2020 Shriners Hospitals for Children Open. It's kind of a mouthful. If you just want to call it Shriners, just call it Shriners. I think that's how I'm going to be calling it throughout this whole video. So, we're going to try to make this one a little quicker than usual. I know that almost seems impossible, but that is what I'm going to try to do. We'll get right into the course breakdown, or I should say the course information. We're at TPC Summerlin. It is a par 71, and it's around 7,100 yards. Obviously, if you haven't paid attention to anything on the PGA, they set up the course different any given day. So I kind of was tracking. I had the wrong information jotted down from last year. I didn't create a video for last year's, but I think I had a par 70, 6,800 yards. It does get to 6,900 yards sometimes. I think when I tracked out one of the days, it was at like 69.7 or something like that. So it's a fairly short golf course, and par 71, they're going to be low scores. I think usually like the average score for the first place is around like 20, 21 under. I think that's probably what's going to be. So we're going to want to find birdie makers for this tournament. And I don't think it's going to be difficult to do that. So the golf course is TPC Summerlin. It's been played. This tournament has been played here for a really long time. I started kind of mapping out a database where I had stats going all the way back to the 90s. And I believe this golf course, I know they always had a tournament in Vegas, but I think it was this golf course. So there is a lot of history at this golf course. I'm positive, like 80-90% sure that it's been played here. So either way, again, it's in Vegas, Nevada. We have bent grass greens. And again, if you've been with me from last year, you know, going through all this, I only really care what's on the green, because the rough, okay, let me back it up. If it was the US Open or a golf course that's known to have thick rough, I would care about the rough. I would care about the grass on the rest of the golf course, not just the greens. But the greens will have about 50% of most golfers. I mean, it'll be the surface that their golf ball will be on 50% of the time. And that's typically because of putting. So I really rate the greens, the grass on the greens, way higher than any of the other parts of the golf course. So bent grass greens, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like ryegrass or even maybe somewhat Bermuda in the fairways or in the rough. But I don't really care so much about that. This golf course isn't that difficult with the grass length or anything like that, so I'm not going to worry about it. The architect, I mean, it says the designer. If you were to wiki it, it's Bobby Weed. I've never seen his name next to anything else when it comes to any of the other golf courses. Again, above, I have stats that'll go by. These are just kind of the stats that I find important. So have with it as you will. It doesn't bother me what you do with it or what you don't do with it. But if you guys haven't been here, I kind of I don't really do a really good job of doing this. I was going to say a poor job, but I don't do a very good job. These shows consist of, I go over course information like I just did. We'll go over course history, recent form. Then we do like a breakdown of kind of recent form, course history in a last year, last week bucket segment. And then I go through tee times, grass stats, and then swing stats. And then towards the end, I create a lineup, basically. Or I start creating lineups just to show you what my process is and basically who I'm targeting for the most part. Okay, so let's get into the spreadsheet. And right away, the first thing I have up is the DK page, but actually, it's the lineup page. So we're going to change that. The notes page actually comes up. And what I want to do is just go over course history. I'm on the course history tab, and we're going to go ahead filter. I already started this. So I filtered out the golfers who aren't playing this week. And then we'll look at their average. So I have it sorted on average right now. Patrick Cantlay has the best course history at this tournament. He's played it the last 2 years, second last year, first the year before. So that's 2 events under his belt here, and that is 2 top 10s. Not only top 10s, but 2 top 2s. So he's got, smoking hot course history. I'm not nearly that high on him because the last 2 years the field was they were kind of weak. So I'm not going to put a lot of stock into Patrick Cantlay's course history, but I will. I just don't know with his price really how much I want to play of him. So we'll leave that later on in the spreadsheet as we go through players. Hideki's only played it once. So when I look through this, whenever I'm looking at course history, sure, this looks nice. Hideki and Joaquin Niemann, they both have only played it once. I don't really necessarily like that. It doesn't give me a lot of confidence as to, should I or should I not play them? I mean, it looks good, don't get me wrong, and they actually have success here, which is a huge point that I would make as a golfer, is having success at a golf course matters. So, with that being said, I do like Matsuyama, I do like Niemann, I like a lot of the players that are up here because most of them don't have really poor finishes. I think 56 here with Webb Simpson when his putter was off. I mean, so I would, if you take away that 56, he's at 14.2. You'd slot him in here as the top 5 or a top 5 golfer. I know you could do that with anybody, so I'm not going to do that with everyone. I just wanted to show you, kind of taking some numbers out, what that would look like for some of these golfers. And I think Webb Simpson is actually a pretty decent play. You see Siwoo Kim up here. I think he'll be someone I'll mention later on. Luke List also. He kind of had a poor showing last week, so some guys might be off of him. I really like Beau Hosler. You will find out later on. It's primarily because it's bent grass, and he actually has good course history here. So Beau Hosler is probably going to be someone I'm going to play a little bit. I'll probably put him in nearly 50% of my lineups because of his price. It just allows me to have more access to other players. So I will show you that as we get into the spreadsheet, but this is course history. We'll go to recent form now. This is the 2020 recent form page. So I track the last 7 weeks. If you guys aren't familiar, I should have said that about the course history. I track the last, from 2013 going forward, because 2013 again is actually kind of the start of the modern PGA schedule. That's why 2013 matters to me. Going before that, you had different. You didn't have the October start or the September start of the season, and I think each tournament started with the Tournament of Champions, which is every winner from the year before plays into that field. It's a smaller event, yada yada yada. So I go for recent form. I go the last 7 weeks. And that includes weeks off. So there you have it right there. Now, as we go through all the different years, I will say this. I actually don't have that marked for the rest of the years. I do have it here. And of course, if you watched last week, the week before, they were there as well. Because weeks off do matter. It matters for golfers who are hot. It matters for golfers who are not. It does matter. So as we go through this, let's just go through it, and then we'll see how it looks. I did not rehearse it, so I'm not sure what we're going to find. But basically what I like to look at is I like to look at the top 10. And again, if you've been with me, anything that goes over 13 places, I don't include the top 10, like the 10th place. And sometimes I don't include the 9th place. So I'm not going to include top 10s for any of these guys. I will just use this information because I'm really trying to narrow down everything, and including those 10th place finishers, it widens it too much, and we can't really, like I said, narrow down our what we want to look for in this tournament. But when I go here and I look at the recent form, I'm looking at what kind of variation do we have, or what kind of pattern those types of things. So right away, unlike last week, where we didn't see a lot of recent form under 20 in the top 10, you see 3 golfers here that have it. And then you also have 2 golfers that have really close to 20 or better recent form. So it tells me coming into this tournament, you kind of want a little bit of form, good form, I should say. But don't get me wrong, you're going to see a 60 to 80 ranged golfer in just about every year for the top 10. So it's definitely worth noting and mentioning. You obviously don't have to play, especially like this year's or the 2019 tournament. You didn't need to play anyone with poor recent form. In fact, you could have went something like that. And maybe you couldn't because of the price. So that's 47,900. So yeah, you wouldn't have been able to. And Chesson Hadley was 9,300, so you wouldn't have played him either. Either way, as we go through this, that's one thing to look about or think about when you're looking at this as I'm talking about it. What was the likelihood you could even have paired any of those guys up? Because they're expensive, right? So you wouldn't have played Ricky Fowler, and he was one of the guys that had decent recent form going into the tournament. But yeah, you would have played something like that. That leaves me 7,000 left. Yeah, you would have to use like Bud Colley, or you just get rid of Answer and put in Palmer. No, Streb. Yeah, that still doesn't really help. That goes over. So anyways, you couldn't have fit anyone inside the top 10 in a suitable lineup. And that's really important. I mean, I guess you could have. Could have went something like this, right? Yeah, so that's 49,300 right there. So you could have done something like that, and that's totally doable. Would that have been the optimal lineup? I don't think so. I don't have points on every one of these players, but I do have the optimal lineup for 2019 marked right here. And probably talking a little too much about this, but I do want you guys to understand that, although we're looking at a static place, sometimes we can't fit those players into a lineup. So as I'm talking about it, take it kind of with a grain of salt, but it is still good to see, the different variations of recent form that are going into each of the top 10s, each of these years. So that's 2019, 2018. We've got 2 golfers that have top 20 recent form, and I shouldn't say top 20 or better recent form. We do again have another 60, but we had a guy who had a missed cut and a withdraw. Withdraws are 90s in my book. Missed cuts are 85. So again, kind of just pointing out the fact, another guy that's kind of like, well, that's more mid-20s. It's not lower 20s like we saw the year before, or the year ahead, 2019. This is 2018. So just, again, showing you the different recent forms. Now, we don't have one here that has 20 or better. We only had 7 golfers who had 20 or better. And I know that because, again, I keep track of that here. So there were 10 in this year's tournament. In 2019, we had 12. Wow. A lot of noise going on, and you guys couldn't hear it, so that's kind of cool. Anyways, sorry, I was temporarily distracted. Yeah, so like we don't really have a tell here. I like seeing kind of these 20s just to get a little heads up. We got a couple, mid recent form, because that's pretty much average on any given tournament is somewhere 40 to 60. If we go to 2018, you see a couple guys there with that. 2019, just see 1, 2. So 40 to 60. But again, more golfers are going to be in there. So the likelihood, if we do probability, the likelihood of them being inside the top 10 is pretty high. And I'm just going to go through these other ones pretty quickly. Again, pretty sporadic. now we're getting to a point, and this is one thing I should mention. So here we go to 2019. I should probably do something so you guys could see that it's 2019 as opposed to me telling you. But I'll continue to try to tell you, so you know. These two red headers here, whenever I put red next to each other, it really indicates that it was the same week. So you had the WGC HSBC with the same week as the Sanderson Farms Championship in 2019. Now that was the alternate event, and that started in 2017, where those two kind of shadowed each other. So once we get to 2016, now you're not going to see two tournaments together. And 2017, 2018, 2019, you had more golfers that played Sanderson Farms that came over to the Shriners than you did the WGC. And of course, WGC is a limited field, but if I was to even do a ratio, I would say maybe less than 10% of the golfers from the WGC came over and played the Shriners, as probably 30 to 40%, if not more, of the Sanderson Farms golfers came over and played Shriners. So I think that's worth noting because it is important. And I feel like this year, we don't really have to think about, you really don't have to think about those, 2018, 2019, 2017 being different than 2016, 2015, 2014, nor this year's tournament. I think they all kind of go together because it's the beginning of the year and you're going to get a lot of golfers, kind of, rookies and golfers who need to play every week to keep their card, that kind of stuff. They're going to be at this tournament, although this year's tournament actually has more stars in it than any of the other years, much like last week. And last week was kind of interesting. Only one of the quote-unquote stars really did well. The other one, I think you had two guys that missed the cut. So yeah, it's interesting to say the least. But going on through the recent form here, this is 2016, 2015. Again, recent form is all over the place. And then 2014, a lot of guys in the red. And again, like I was talking about, so here's the Tour Championship. Typically, you have a little bit of an off season. So maybe these numbers don't matter. I would have to go back and kind of re-edit this and try to figure it out that way. As to what the recent form was for the last 7 weeks as opposed to the last 7 tournaments, because that's what this would have been. But yeah, so recent form, I'm not really looking for anything. I do want to target basically 2 golfers who have recent form 20 or better. 1 golfer, mid to low 20s, probably 1 golfer in the 40 to 60, and try to kind of mix and match. Like I literally don't want. So just so you guys know, there are 10 golfers this week that have 20 or better recent form, and 4 of them are up at the top. That's going to be really difficult when you're roster constructing. Because you basically have to pick one of these guys. 2 of these guys makes the rest of lineup construction difficult, especially if Brooks is one of your guys. So it's worth noting that you're probably not going to pick multiple. You're probably going to pick one guy here, and I think that's fine. I think you can anchor like last week. I think one of these guys will finish top 5. And if the rest of the roster fits, then obviously you need them. If it's too expensive, then you wouldn't, Meaning, like, if Brooks finishes 4th and 1st, 2nd, and 3rd were like 8,000, 9,000, 7,000, you wouldn't be able to play Brooks because you needed 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So although he would have been 4th, you wouldn't have been able to play him. And we've actually been through that scenario many times in our review videos. So it's one of those things you have to look at. You have to think about when constructing a lineup. Okay, so we've covered course history. We've covered recent form. Probably a little bit longer than I really wanted to, and I said in the beginning of the video that I wanted to make it fast. Hopefully you guys used a tip from a while back ago. Watch the video in 1.5 times speed because you'll get through a lot of it faster and I know I kind of have a slower delivery. So if you didn't know that before, you know it now. I'm sure this video is going to be an hour long. So we're at the 20-minute mark. You can save yourself 10 minutes if you do it that way. Okay. Let's get into the next part of it, and that's the bucket system. So the last few weeks, I have not done the bucket system because it just didn't apply. It was the beginning of the year. We really didn't have last week's stats to go by, and of the tournaments that we did review or preview, in the years past, they didn't have tournaments before it. So we really couldn't use any of the last week's stats. And some you couldn't even use the last year's stats because it was kind of funny. It was fishy. Just things didn't really work out. I did use last year's stats last week, and the ones came through on top like they typically do. So we are back doing the bucket system. And I do have a video for the bucket system. If you just, explore the channel, explore my channel, you can find that bucket system to kind of give you a breakdown of what it means. I probably will kind of go through it while I'm talking, but oh man, I did not color code it. Now that I look at it, that's a little unfortunate. So don't mind the colors here, because the ranking is right here. Wow. Usually I'm a little better prepared, but either way, I'm not gonna go and fix those while talking to you guys. Our top 5 last year buckets are ones. Our last year bucket ones are guys who missed the cut. So we're targeting players who missed the cut the year before at this tournament. So if we went back to course history and looked at, so we still keep this still present, or playing, I should say. And we sorted this from high to low, and we came down here. All these 85s are missed cuts. So I want to be targeting golfers who missed the cut, that are playing in this tournament. And how many do we have? We have 27 golfers that missed the cut. So that kind of, narrows down the pool of players to pick from. And if I go back to the notes page here, I do keep track of those kind of different. I am actually going to do this so you guys can see it a little better, because I want you guys to be able to see every single year, and not just like the last 4 years. So I think that allows you to see, you can see everything. I keep track of the top 10 and what these last year buckets, last week buckets, every single year. And obviously you can see there are multiple ones every single year. There's not just one. So like if we look at our last year 5 scores, you only see one going back the last 5 years. You see absolutely no 6s in the last year bucket score. And I think that's important because I feel like it's telling. It either means this golf course, you either get it or you don't. Or I'm trying to think now. It's like, well, this is one of those tournaments that's in the beginning of the year. So coming here, if you didn't do well, if you fall in that last year bucket 6, there's probably a reason because of it. And I can't remember what the last year bucket 6 score is. I'm looking at it right now. It's 60 to 80th place, which is kind of purgatory. Like that's a really bad range to fall under. Doesn't mean you have great success. You made the cut, but it's still, not that great. And we'll go back and look at it. But my main point is you see 1s, 2s, and 3s in just about every single year. So you don't see a 3 in 2018, one there who actually won the tournament, another one in 2019 that won the tournament, and 2015 got second. So 3s are kind of important in the last year bucket score. You might want to put at least, so I'll look at it this way. There's 5 tournaments here. In 4 of those tournaments, a last year bucket 3 finished inside the top 5, which I would say then use those percentages, 4 into 5, that's 80%. 80% of your lineups, put a 3 in there. And then the other, 20% don't. So obviously if you make 5 lineups and 4 of them, put a 3. And then, we can sort in my spreadsheet by the threes and choose one from there that we like. But I want you guys to see that, kind of think along that level. You see a bunch of ones and twos. I'm probably going to make most of my lineups ones and twos, and you'll see that once we get to lineup construction. But I did want to mention that I have a count over here so you guys can see how many golfers fell into those buckets, into those ranges. So obviously in this one, we had 12 golfers throughout the last 5 years finish, or who had a missed cut the year before, finish inside the top 5. There were 11 who did not play the year before that finished inside the top 5, and then the rest kind of just sprinkled. And you can see that the same thing here for last week. This is my last week. This is the top 5 table. So the last week buckets here, 14 finished inside the top 20 of the weeks, or the tournament the week before, and then 11 didn't play. And I think that's also telling, big time telling, where targeting ones and twos for your last week's score is probably going to be very, very beneficial for you. And the tell there is that people coming in with very, very hot recent form, or who took a break and didn't play the week before, those guys have the better chance of finding the top 5. And then I also keep score of the top 10. And the top 10 is what I transfer over to the DK spreadsheet, which we'll see shortly after this. It just tracks more. So now you have kind of a split between the year before missing the cut or not playing. And the rest kind of still stays a little bit behind. But now you kind of have a little surge of the 1 to 20 range. So finding someone who finished top 20 the year before in that tournament is beneficial. Then you come down here, and now let's see, what did you see? Okay, so now the did not play actually caught up to the 1 to 20 range, and really nothing else crept up that much. I guess missing the cut the week before did a little bit, so it's worth noting that. And the other thing to go with all this too is I like to see how consistent those numbers are from the last 5 years. So finding a golfer who finished top 20 the week before, your minimum is 2. So from the last 5 tournaments, at least 2 of those golfers inside the top 10 were inside the top 20 the week before. So I also look at that. And just kind of look at the fluctuation a little bit. You have a 1 here for the did not play that obviously tied the top 20 from the week before. So really, do you want the consistency, or do you want the fact that you could have a really big number here that finished inside the top 10? And you can see that with the last year, not playing really mattered, but as did missing the cut. Top 5 is where I really dig down into it, because finding golfers in the top 5 is so detrimental in finding success in DraftKings. You need to find, at least 3 golfers in the top 5 and even the top 6. But you want first, second, and third. First and second will do if you've got 4th or 5th. But you really want 1, 2, 3 if it fits in the salary. So this is where I like to go pinpoint what range I should actually really be targeting. Because although we have a count here that shows you, the volume of players finishing in those ranges, you really want to find, the consistent one that's like, okay, no matter what, this range will find the top 5 or will find the top 10. And really the missed cut really sticks out like a sore thumb. You want at least 2 golfers. So I will have at least 2 last year ones on all of my lineups. I might go 5% of those lineups with 1 or none, just to, because any year can be a mold breaking year, honestly. Any year can be. And there are players in this tournament that are mold breakers. So I think it's best not to get too caught up in that, but it is worth the mention. Okay, so those are the buckets. Spent 10 minutes basically talking about that, which I'm okay with. Now we get into tee times, and unlike last week, I actually went through, highlighted some of the players I liked. So as we talk about this, why do we look at tee times, or why do I look at tee times? Because I am a competitive golfer, and it matters what group you're in. So you don't really have control over that. However, there are players that are catalysts that'll either help you play better or help you play worse. And I think as long as you watch enough golf, you know who those players are. There's one golfer that comes to mind all the time, and that's Bubba Watson. He's toned it down throughout the years, but just playing, if you just watch his antics on the golf course, if he's not playing well, he's very audible. He's very flamboyant. He lets you know he's not happy. That can affect some players negatively. Some players actually might perform better with that kind of stuff. You know, I was always a player that if I'm playing with a whiner, you know, someone who just whines all the time, but is a good golfer, and just the fact that he's whining and actually doing bad kind of like boosts my spirits. Like, good, I'm glad that you're not playing well. I'm not really that diabolical, but there are times where it's just like, geez, man, get over yourself. And sometimes it makes me happy, sometimes it pisses me off, and now I'm playing pissed off. This game is a psychological game. 99.9% of the game is psychological, so that matters. It matters. It has to matter. And if you've played competitive golf, you know that. So that's why I look at starting tee time, or I look at tee times. I look to see who's paired together. I look to see who might provide that catalyst, again, negatively or positively. So as we go through here, I just numbered them. And the numbering system that I'm doing this on, obviously ones are my favorites, and then any number obviously higher than that, just I have less confidence in. So this group here, I like Sam Ryder, and I think the whole group can feed off of each other. So that's why I have marked them, and I think if I am gonna play any one of them, I'm gonna play at least two of them. I think that's a group that you'd want to do that. Although it might be beneficial. I like Sam Ryder, like I said. I might just play Sam Ryder because I think the other two will help him. But Brian Gay or Michael Thompson could come out the top of this, and they, you know, could be your first round leaders. Could be, you know, putting themselves in a really good position after Friday's round to finish inside, you know, the top 10, top 20 throughout the weekend, as long as they don't blow up, you know, that kind of thing. So anyways, that's kind of a longer drawn out section for those guys, but that's all I wanted to say is as we go through these, that's what I mean, and that's why, you know, they're twos basically. So in the next one, I really like Grillo. I actually really like Haas as well. Haas has really good bentgrass stats, and if you look above, he is on my low price tier guys just because, well, he has a really good salary, and he's got really good bentgrass stats. So for his salary, that is. So I'll probably mix some of those guys up. I kind of like Keegan. I don't think Jim Herman is good enough in this tournament to do anything, so that's why I don't have him marked. But Keegan and Ches, definitely like those guys this week. Kevin, Phil, and Tony. I really only like Tony. And really, Finau could probably boost up the other two guys, but I really don't like Phil or Kevin Na this week. So I don't know why they're ones. I think I just marked it in unison as ones. I would much rather go with Tony Finau and play him alone. I like Charles Howell in this next one. As I was going through this, Pat Kazire actually stepped up a little bit in my book. He's got decent bentgrass stats. He's got decent course history stats. I think he's worth a look. And same with Russell Knox. Knox is kind of, I mean, he's your prototypical ball striker. So I think he's worth the play. And I think that group, again, just like that first one we talked about, I think these guys can provide each other a little bit of a spark. Brooks Koepka, this is one of two dynamite groups. I think you want and it stinks because Brooks is the top priced guy and Adam Scott's like the fourth priced guy. So putting them together, I think, gives you like $7,000 to work with. And there aren't enough low price guys that I like that I want to do that with. I will put them together in maybe 5% of my lineups, but yeah, it's difficult. I think you need to pick one or the other. You can't pick them both. And it might come back to bite me. And honestly, Gary Woodland could come out at the top of this group because that's just what happens when you construct lineups based off of this. Is like, oh, the one guy you didn't think of, he's the guy that busts through. The next group. Oh, by the way, these asterisk marks here, these are guys that are kind of the tops of the Bentgrass stats. So that's what I have here. I wanted to mark those guys because Bentgrass stats obviously matter to me. So that's why Snedeker has the little asterisk next to him. Ryan Armour, I think, is actually a good Bentgrass player. And I think Grayson Murray is pretty decent too. I think that this group is worth a look. Pair 2 of them up, pair 3 of them up, maybe just play solo. Doesn't matter. I think it'll be fine. I really like Ryan Palmer this week, and as I was looking at the low price guys, I really like Pat Perez. Pat Perez has good stats here at this tournament. Bentgrass, it's okay. But for his price, he's a low price guy. I think it's worth a play, and especially if you want to pair him up with Palmer or Lashley. I mean, Palmer is one of those streaky guys that he gets on birdie streaks like crazy. So I would play, a decent amount of Palmer and feel confident about it. I did mark Furyk by himself because I don't like who he's playing with, but I also think Furyk is one of those golfers that doesn't need anybody. I think he's pretty stone cold when it comes to who he's playing with. He can play with the worst golfers, still shoot a 59 or 58, I should say. He can play with the best golfers and shoot a 66, which is good, obviously. He might not be the low guy of the group, but he will always be kind of that steady Eddie that just 3 under here, 3 under there, 3 under there, 4 under there. Boom. You have the sub 70 bonus record for a guy who finished 4th place and never sniffed 1st place. So I think Furyk is a good play, especially by himself. Don't feel afraid to play him. Xinjun Zhang, he's not really playing in a group that I really want to play with. I do like Uline. I think he's a grinder, but I don't think this tournament suits him. Akshay Bhatia, he is a really young kid. I think he's like 17, or at least he was two weeks ago. He's probably still 17, but obviously I don't know much about him. I just know he's a 17-year-old quote-unquote phenom. So he might be a good speculative play. I don't know. I'm not going to play him, but I'm only talking about him because he has good Bentgrass stats and has pretty decent recent form. Scotty Scheffler is basically your next Colin Morikawa, your next Matthew Wolff. This guy is good. Everyone talks about how good he is on the PGA. Not just DFS pros. The PGA guys are talking about how good Scotty Scheffler is. The only thing I don't like about playing him this week is who the heck are these other 2 guys? They're young kids. I know that for sure. And in fact, that Celinda, if you were following last week's tournament and you saw the cut, it's now top 65 for the cut. So I guess if you guys don't know anything about PGA cut, basically half the field does not get to play the other 2 days of the weekend. I'm sorry. Does not get to play during the weekend, which it's a 4-round tournament. The cut happens after 2 rounds. If you don't score low enough, you don't get to play the next 2 rounds. So that's my little summary of what that is. Celinda was a guy who looked like he was in trouble his last hole and salvaged a par. It's like, oh man. And I think he even got an eagle like 2 holes prior, which he then catapulted to 2 under, and it's like, man, I just need you to get a bogey, just 1 bogey. But obviously 69 people were 1 under or better, so the cut moved to 2 under, which was unfortunate. We just needed a few golfers just to do poor, coming down the stretch, and Celinda was one of those. So that's why I know Celinda. Nelson Ledesma, he I've seen him on the leaderboard a couple times, so I know he's capable of low rounds, but I'm not going to play him. Anyways, too much to talk about those guys. Scotty Scheffler, a great play. You can play him alone. I think it's going to be fine. I'm a little iffy about the group that he's in. This one here, I don't like the group, but Cameron Percy has really good bentgrass stats, and he actually has good recent form from the week before. So he's probably worth the play, honestly. And I would pair him up with Sam Burns. Burns, kind of fell off a little bit last year. Started out kind of hot, but really haven't heard of him much lately. And that group actually starts out the afternoon wave. I have no idea what the weather is going to be like. I heard there's going to be wind. There usually is in Vegas. So really, if you look at the weather and one stack is supposed to be much windier than another, including the next day, just go with the stack that doesn't have a lot of wind. Wind is the by far biggest factor when it comes to golf stats, I suppose. That's not really the way I wanted to word that. Golf results. So if it is really windy on one of the stacks, definitely play the other one. And if that's the case, target either the morning guys or the afternoon guys. So far this year, it's been a mix of both. You want kind of an equal mix. That's just what the top 10 has shown me the last 2 weeks at least. But, last few weeks, it kind of matters. And last week, when I thought there would have been a difference, or actually the last 2 weeks, the back nine looked so much easier than the front nine, and you found an equal split of golfers who start on the front nine as opposed to the back nine, as well as morning or afternoon. So it's a crapshoot. I don't think it really matters that much. But if you have a conviction, go with it. That's all I'm trying to say. If you've got a conviction one way or the other, I'm showing you all the players that I think are great in their groups. Go for them. Choose them, or one of them. Do with it as you will. Watney I really like. Hubbard has really good bentgrass stats, so that's why I've marked those two. Stewart doesn't really have good bentgrass stats. He had really good Bermuda stats, like in last week's tournament. Not so much with bentgrass. I am off Patrick Rogers this week. I know most of you guys probably haven't even heard of him, or go, why would you even be on him? I think he's making a comeback this year. I think he's going to play really well. He was getting pretty hot before he got injured, and he was playing injured during his last couple times playing, and he had great results. So he's a very talented guy. Him and Tony Finau were talked about in the same breath for a certain period of time. And actually, Rogers was much more closer to getting a victory than Finau did, or was. So I think Rogers is a step away. And actually, Abraham Answer has really... So this group is really good, now that I look at it. Answer is like 2019. He's in the stats that are going by. I can't remember which one it is. Thought it was 2019 bent. Oh, it was the top 10 bentgrass percentage. So the percentage to find themselves inside the top 10. There he is, right there. So he's got a 30% mark of finding a top 10 in bentgrass events. I think that's worth a look. And pairing them up with either of those golfers there, I think are really good. And I don't think any of them are that expensive. Maybe Harmon, but I think Rogers is like $7,400 maybe. I can't remember, but still worth the play. Zach Blair has good bentgrass stats. That's why I've marked him with Ryan Moore. Ryan Moore is pretty decent on bentgrass as well. This group just seems like a sneaky good group. That's why I have them at 3. That's just my confidence is low in these guys, but I think it's worth a play. Here's your other dynamite group. Young guys, explosive. This group could literally altogether blitz the field. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but the fact you're putting all 3 of those guys together, they're catalysts big time. None of them are bad-tempered, ill-tempered golfers. I think they all will look at each other. They're young, first of all. They're going to be extremely competitive. Wolf hits the ball a mile. Morikawa is just a very even keel stat-wise guy. Like he He hits the ball a good distance. He's very good with approach. He's good with putting. He's an all-around good golfer. He is your top-tier balanced golfer. Wolf gets really streaky and hot. Same with Neiman. So this group has the potential to go really low, and this would be actually Dynamite 1. The Brooks Koepka would be Dynamite 2, as crazy as that sounds. If I was rating those groups. And I also like that they're the afternoon. I like the PM AM stack, and a lot of guys do. But I think, this is a hell of a group. Also, right behind them, Patrick Cantlay, Bryson DeChambeau, and Webb Simpson. So those guys can get hot also. Especially if they're going to be... They're the group following right behind Neiman Morikawa. So there's going to be a bunch of buzz going through with those groups. I think it's worth the play, honestly. Well, not so much worth the play. Worth the consideration. Like, you got to start your lineup somewhere. And when we get to lineup construction, I will bring it up. And we'll go through and figure it out. Here's Hideki. I like Hideki, especially with Cam Champ. I don't really so much care for Kevin Tway. I don't think Kevin Tway really offers anything to the group. I don't think he feeds off anybody, and I don't think he will make anyone... He's a boring fucking dude, to be quite honest. So, I don't know. That whole group, except for Cam Champ, is pretty boring. So, I get the whole group. The two guys there. So, I don't know. Could be the worst group to play, honestly. Cam Champ might be bored out of his mind. Fratelli has really good bentgrass stats. I'm pairing up... I just put Siwoo Kim there because I think he's going to be the biggest beneficial or benefactor to Dylan Fratelli playing well. That's why I have him included. A really good group here of high potential players. They obviously have a lot of potential, and they just have never really what's the word, like, capitalized on it. So I like this group. I think this is one of those other groups that feed off each other really well, and it might be worth a look to play them. Stanley is a solid ball striker, great course history here. Bent grass stats are great. That's why I have him marked with someone. And honestly, John Huh is just as good as Cam Smith, in my opinion. So I think it's worth the play. I'm not gonna disregard that. I like Doc Redman and Bud Cauley. Bud Cauley has decent course history here, I think. If anything, he has really good beginning of the year history, so I think he's worth a play. And I just paired him up with Doc Redman because I think Redman's one of those other young kids that's going to do really well. Here we have Hadwin, Ben Ann, Sepp Straka, another good group, especially with bent grass stats. Adam Hadwin, one of the top guys with bent grass stats. I think it's worth a play. Definitely worth a look. Then we're going to get down here where I don't have anyone else marked. I do have Lanto because, again, of the bent grass stats. To me, it's not that big of a play. I don't think it's really worth it. Yeah. Okay. So there's your starting holes. I went through the groups that I thought were great. Hopefully it provided you guys with some kind of insight as to who to play. Now we'll get into the DK page, go over the grass stats. So I already have this, already have it filtered. I'm just going to remove a lot of this information here because you don't need to see it. We've already talked about it. Now we're into our bent grass stats. So go ahead, filter by overall. Now, when you see the stats going on up above, you're going to be like, well, where's Scotty Scheffler and Colin Morikawa? I don't like putting golfers that have less than 7 or 8 events under their belt as my top grass stats guys. So Scotty Scheffler has great stats, but you also can see he's never finished inside the top 10. So, this 13.5 could literally be like a 12th place and then a 15th place. That equals 13.5. So there isn't anything, sure, great stats. And actually, let me hide from here forward because I have to make a point here. At $8,800, do you want a golfer not finishing inside the top 10? My answer is no, you don't. So that's why I wouldn't include him either. And same with Morikawa, like 9,500, but he has a 50% clip of finding the top 10. 50% clip finding the top 10, that means of his 4 events, he found 2. The other 2 events to get him to 26.5, something happened in one of those tournaments that brought his average way down. So I think I really like Morikawa this week. Definitely think about playing him. And then you just have kind of your staple of high-end golfers. I mean, look at this. No one is less than $8,800. That's at the top here. And I think it's fitting. Bubba, he might be worth the play. There's Furyk, like I said, and he's a last year bucket 1 golfer. So you can see I have the buckets over here. Last year bucket, last week bucket. The lower the number, the higher the probability they'll find themselves inside the top 20 or top 10, I should say, because I only go by top 10 stats. So there you go. There you have the lower the score, the better chance they have finding the top 10. So you got a bunch of 2s up here and then Jim Furyk. That's why I would probably play a bunch of Jim Furyk this week. Of course, we have some 3s, and again, 80% of your lineups play a 3. So you've got Cantlay, Neiman, Simpson, at the top here for your overall Bentgrass stats. Yeah. Play at your own risk, right? And then 2019 Bentgrass stats, Adam Scott came on hot last year. I think he's definitely worth the play. Him and Morikawa, I think, are going to actually be kind of the staple in most of my lineups because they offer, both of them together offer me more salary to work with, gives me access to better players, and just a more variety of mixing and matching. So I really like Adam Scott this week. I really like Collin Morikawa. I also really like Brooks Koepka. It's going to be really difficult to kind of think through. But again, now you have Scotty Scheffler. Hideki is another golfer I like a lot. Yeah, and then again, nobody lower than $8,800. Scott Piercy makes his way in there, I should say. And then there's Brian Harman, of course. So up here, other than Scotty Scheffler, no one really less than 9% clip of finding the top 10. So we have a good field this week that have really good stats. And here's your likelihood of finding the top 10. So this is the percentage that these golfers in their events have found the top 10. That's basically what that percentage is. And of course, this goes back to 2013. So that's why you'll see some older guys up here with good numbers who might be struggling. We don't really see that, honestly, when I look at all of this. So now that you see that, hopefully it gives you a little bit of an idea of who to choose. I'm not... Oh, yeah, I guess I'll go over these grass stats. Or not grass stats, but swing stats. I really don't want to because I don't think it really matters, but I might as well talk about them. Many of you guys know that I don't like to talk about swing stats because I feel like, I wouldn't say you get swindled by other people talking about it, but I do believe that it's deceptive going through swing stats because swing stats don't matter when it comes to someone's performance at a tournament. Like, these stats looking beforehand don't matter. The stats that they produce at the tournament matter. So yeah, that's just, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm just going to keep it at that. I don't really want to get too much more into it, but we can look at, some of these top guys here, tee to green. Now, there are some golfers you're not going to see because they haven't played any events this year. So you're not going to see Brooks Koepka. I don't think you're going to see... Maybe is it just him? No, there's some other guys if I were to sort by salary. So Webb Simpson hasn't played yet. Tony Finau hasn't played. Gary Woodland hasn't played. So obviously you can expect those guys to be at the top 10, in a lot of these stats, or at least three of these categories. But I'm just going to let you look at, there's your tee to green. You can always pause this video, write down these numbers if you want. Look at the guys, that you're like, oh man, Grillo here at $7,600. He's 6th in tee to green. I like that a lot. Now, obviously, this goes back to week 1. These stats do, since it was a refresh of the year, and these come from the PGA website. I just ranked them for what they are in the field. So again, Cam Champ. Wow, Cam Champ at the top. Like I said, I'm just gonna keep this up for a little bit. You guys can pause, record, however you want. I don't really care about these stats. Approach is always nice to look at, but it doesn't tell the full story of a round of golf or rounds of golf. It's just a cheap way to say, hey, this guy's gonna hit every green, but he might not make every putt, which means he's not gonna finish in the top 10. But hey, he might. Yeah, so there's your putting, greens and reg. You see Scotty Scheffler up there a lot. I do like seeing that. Same with Adam Hadwin. Definitely worth a look. And obviously Jim Furyk you saw up there a little bit. Proximity, I mean, I like a stat that I saw, the likely or like the percentage that golfers get a ball inside a certain yardage or a certain, feet away from the pin. That's a great stat. That stat to me is way more important than green and reg, proximity, or approach. If it is a green in reg and they're 7 feet away from the pin 30% of the time, you can now start thinking of percentages. The average tour pro makes an 8-foot putt 50% of the time. So if you're inside 7 feet 30% of the time, 15% of the time you should be making birdie, right? If I do my math right, 15% of the time, like 15% of a round of golf, I'm guessing. Maybe that's too generic, too generalized, but either way, you get what I'm trying to say. And I wish I had those stats, but I don't know where to find them. Otherwise, I would include those big time. And then birdie or better. This is actually a really good stat because this is going to show how hot someone is, leading into this tournament. And a lot of the golfers that I like are up there. Scheffler. I saw a bunch of guys. Scott. Furyk. Yeah. Keegan I like. Howell's not bad. So, anyways. We are at an hour. Oh man, this went by way too fast. Now it's time to look at the lineups. So if you've made it this far, thank you for staying. Now we'll get into the lineups. I think for this, I'm actually going to put timestamps in the video so you guys can get to them much faster if you don't want to listen to rambling and stuff like that. So I'll keep an eye out for that. I'll definitely try to do that. Yeah, let's go ahead and look at the lineups here. I'll pull up my lineup construction page, which is just my way of tracking how much, salary I have left when I put people together. So like I talked about, you put Brooks and Adam Scott together, you only have 7,000 left. You put Brooks and Hideki together, you only have 71. Brooks and Morikawa, 72. Obviously, you guys can see the screen. I guess those that are just listening, Adam Scott and Hideki give you 75. That's definitely one of those that I really like. Hideki and Morikawa give you 77. Again, that's something I really like. Oh, well, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this. So then Adam Scott and Morikawa give you 7,600. So that's really great. I'm going to keep this up like that so you guys can just see, and I'm going to start down here and create a lineup that I really like. So if I were to go Brooks, start with Brooks, and then, okay, so what I remember is we want at least 2 last year 1 golfers. I do recall, right? We go back here. Here's our 1. You want 2. Okay, so we'll find 2 1s. Go back to the DK page. So really what we can do is clear all and just put 1s and look at how many 1s that we have. Now we have a total of It's 27 ones. Now, those ones, they're like the highest salary is 8,300. So right away it's like, that's awesome, right? Like I can create so many lineups, and if I pick 2 of these golfers, that gives me so much more openness to, you know, other lineups. Now, I'm going to put some caution to that because I'm looking at all these golfers and I'm like, what the heck? Who are these guys? Are we really going to find golfers here to find the top 10? I mean, literally, honestly. I'm going to go ahead, hide these so we can kind of bring in the grass stats so you guys can see that. Now, out of these, I can just go like this and pick the guys that I really like. So obviously, I have starred the top 2 guys here, and I didn't look at this way beforehand. I just went down the full roster and just liked the guys pretty much based off their bent grass stats. But honestly, any of these guys here have good enough bent grass stats to actually play. If there was one other piece that I would want to look at, it'd be the combination of last year, last week. So not only do we get to see how many times one bucket finished inside the top 10, but then we can start pairing them up together. So one thing I want you guys to note is I went through this and looked. So what you're going to see is a 2-1 is in every single lineup. And to me, that matters. The ones aren't like that. I mean, you don't see a 1-2 in every single lineup. Like obviously you don't see it here, but you do have a 1-1. And again, you don't even see 1-1s all the time, which is kind of crazy. You see them in 80% of the lineups. So then if I were to go back to the 2020 DK page, 1-1s might actually be really worth the play. And if you're going to play 80% of 1-1s, well, let's look at all the 1-1s. There are 3. Furyk, Sloan, and Stewart. Obviously, I like Furyk much more than the other 2. But I'll tell you one thing. When I've done something like this before, one of the guy that I play the least, and obviously this always happens, right? He's the guy that finishes inside the top 20 or the top 15. It's like, and then the other guys don't. And so I think you need to play. So if I was to actually go ahead and put a percentage next to these of how much I'd play, I'd put of the 80% of lineups, I'm going to do a 1-1. I'm going to play Furyk in about 60% of those lineups, then Sloan in 25%, and then Stewart in 15. That math actually works out. I can't even remember. Well, 60 plus 40. So yeah, it does. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead, copy Furyk's name, and how much does he cost? 7,500. So he's going to be somewhere in the middle here. And I'm just putting him like that because it just helps me as I'm kind of sorting through. And maybe I shouldn't do that. Either way, I need to find 2-1, at least 2 golfers that are a last year bucket 1. And obviously I like him. I like Lahiri just for shits and giggles, honestly. I shouldn't even say that. Should be more professional. I like a lot of these golfers. I don't like Stadler. Like, I'm going to put a big X next to him. I'm not going to play Stadler. I'm not going to play Brennan Steele. Rory Sabatini. Interesting. I didn't even see him down there. That is crazy. I do like Sabatini. Obviously not good. JT Poston does not have very good bent grass stats. Very good Bermuda player, not so much bent grass. Man, Max Homa is a guy I usually like to play. I'm not going to be playing him this week. Same with KH Lee. Again, very bad bent grass stats down here. These guys are worth a look, but I wouldn't really play them. There's your other 1-1, and then Roger Sloan is that last 1-1. So I'm just gonna do something like that, and really I could do something like this. I could even put like Lahiri or Sabatini over here. Really, I should just put Sabatini. So now I have 2 1s in there at least. Obviously, we can have many more, or not many more, but if we were to go back here, if we lived and died by these numbers, you'd play at least 3 or 2 to 3. And then, of course, if you come down here, you could play up to 5. I'm not going to, but that's kind of giving you an idea of what you can do with these last week buckets, especially if you haven't seen the show before. So definitely keeping that in mind. And then if we come back up, looking at our other bucket, you've got 1 to 3 for did not play. So obviously we have Brooks already there. That could be 1, just the 1 golfer that we have. Or we can find a second golfer that is there. So like we can look at the rest of our salary, 81, 8,000, go ahead and unlock the rest of these golfers and look at salary and just, peer around that 8,000. I mean, I like Wolf. Why wouldn't I play Wolf? So I'll play him there. So now I've got my 2, or I've got 2. I could play 3. I could play 1. It doesn't matter. So I'll keep it like that. Again, 80% of the results last 5 years had a last year bucket 3 in there. So we can find a last year bucket 3 that we like, whether it's Neiman. Neiman's 9,400. That's a bit expensive. I don't like Glover here. Let's go with Piercy. So we can put Piercy here. That leaves us with 8,300 left. Now at 8,300, we could pick anybody. And we don't really have to go, that high. We could probably go with like someone like Harmon or even Answer. I mean, why not, right? And then if we wanted to kind of validate our picks, we can always come back here and say, okay, I've got 2 3s. Do we see that anywhere else? Well, yeah, of course we do. We see it a bunch of times. So, okay, now I feel validated. There's a lineup. I've got a lineup. Yeah, it's all about kind of, pairing your golfers up that you'd like. I feel like throughout this video, I was like, oh, I'll talk about this, and it's totally escaped my mind. Hopefully I went over it. But definitely really looking at the Bentgrass stats. That'll always be at the top of what I look for. So I'll be putting Scotty Scheffler, Colin Morikawa, a lot of Matsuyama. I'm going to play a lot of those guys in lineups, and I'm not going to feel bad about it. I forgot about Beau Hosler. So I'm going to put Hosler here. And again, we can go back and say, well, how many 4s do we see in any given year? Well, there's 2 there, 1 here, 1 there. So 60% of the last 5 years, we've had, whatever. And honestly, if you want to live that route, which is, I guess I would call it more of a conservative way to look at it, where you just stick to your numbers, like, okay, 60% of the time, I'm only going to play 1 last year 4. And then 80% of the time, I'm going to play 1 last year 3. And of those 80% of lineups, in 30% of them, I'm going to play 1 more last year 3. So you could do something like that. Totally could. And in fact, it doesn't really matter. So like, you got your 2 3s there, you got a 2 2, and then 2 1s. So that kind of rounds that out. You could do something like this, put these guys in here, you could make it look that way, and that actually follows the exact same strategy as you would have seen in that notes section. We don't really have a recent form tell. We don't really have a course history tell. But let's say, how about this? just for the sake of it, we can really narrow down our player pool. If we went back to the recent form, you know, looking at course history, like you're gonna see course history doesn't really matter. Recent form. Oh, let's do it that way. So recent form, we want to find someone top 20. So I'll select all the golfers inside, not top 20, but 20 or better. So here are all of our golfers. 20 have a recent form of 20 or better. Obviously, I like Brooks and I like Scott, but we need to pick 2 or 3. I think, well, not 80%. Again, 80% of leaderboards, 80% of top 10s in leaderboards had a recent form 20 or better. So with that being said, you know, we could find 2 golfers here that we really like. And I'm kind of just trying to look at it. There's Sabatini once again, right? So I could go with Sabatini. Brooks was there, but just for the sake of it, let's not pick Brooks and we pick Adam Scott. So now we have 2 recent form 20s. Maybe we're like, you know what? I want a third one. No one's really price efficient. Let's go with Harmon. So right here, now I've got 2 last year 2s, which is an awkward number because we don't see 2 last year 2s, I don't think. I only mean like only 2 last year 2s. Well, it doesn't really matter, I suppose. So, you know, okay, so you did it in 2015. That's perfect, right? So those guys, hey, not bad. We've got 1 last year 1. Let's find another one. We already know some of these players that we like, so let's go ahead and go with Jim Furyk. Sorry. Oh boy. So go ahead and go there. I obviously like Bo Hosler, so I'm going to put him there. Now that leaves us with 10,600. So with 10,600, I already have 3, right? No, I just have 2. Furyk, Sabatini. No, I have Sabatini. Okay, so Sabatini's in there. All right, so let's go ahead, unlock the rest of them. Go up here. Let's just go ahead and you know, sort by our salary and find someone close to 10,600. So Webb Simpson, like right away, it works. I'm kind of cautious of this 20. Like that's too much. That's too many golfers that have that recent form 20 or better. And if we try to find anyone below, we kind of still fall into that little rut. So how about we go with Hideki? And there you go. That's just another way to build a lineup. So I'm going to spend most of my night putting together these lineups. Get this out to you guys right now. It is one of the longest videos I've ever done. So I apologize if you wish it was a little shorter, but again, I'm gonna put those little time marks in there so you guys can just boom, get right to it. And maybe you only care about this, and therefore you only have to watch like 15 minutes of it. But yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. It is definitely running way longer than I wanted it to. So thank you for watching. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you guys have great success this week. I'm rolling on a little bit of a heater. Hopefully we can continue that going through. I think it's an easier week this week. So hopefully we do well. If you liked the video, please leave a like, comment if you have any questions. You can also reach me at my email that I'll have linked in the description. You also could have seen it in the earlier on here, right down there. All right. Subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you next week. Bye.